Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth with your host, Dr. Joel Hunter.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. Today's topic is dealing with the opioid crisis. And we have with us Alicia Gonzalez, an educator, public affairs executive, and the lead consultant for the Central Florida Collective Impact Initiative Project Opioid, and Tony Jenkins, Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield, you would know that organization, Florida Blue Central Region Market President. These folks are spending their days improving the lives and bettering our communities. I won't go through all of your biographies. They're big deals. These are big deal people. And Alicia with her Woman of the Year award and 25 top 25 most influential Hispanic leaders, and Tony has been an icon in this area and in this state for a long time. So here's what I want to talk about, because this program is all about interviewing powerful people who use their power for vulnerable populations. We are now seeing that we are having more deaths result from what am I looking for? What's the term?
So I would say number one, just general drug overdoses.
Yeah, overdoses.
But then how many of those are related to opioid deaths as well? So
talk about that.
So when you think about what's taking place in our country, the CDC has really shared that now we are in an epidemic as it relates to drug overdoses in the country. It's estimated that in 2017, there were over 70,000 drug overdose deaths in this country. Joel, that averages out to about 200 per day.
Oh my goodness.
And about 2/3 of those are related to opioid-related deaths alone.
And I just heard that the overdose, I'm just drawing a blank on that word, but the death from overdose is now exceeding the death from car accidents.
You're right. If you are an adult and you are under the age of 50 years old in this country, there's more chances that you will die from an opioid death than a car crash, than automobile deaths.
So as an insurance person, you make all of your living from statistics. I mean, the algorithms, you understand, what places the people in most danger and so on and so forth. This has to be super alarming to people in the care business. Let me come to you, Alicia, because I was reading your biography, and you have spent a lot of your history in education. You were a principal, assistant principal, dean, teacher, and then went to Valencia for community relations before coming to your present job. Tell us about how this is impacting youth and what you see as a consultant that is specifically alarming for the younger population.
I think a lot of what is happening is mothers and parents are taking these opioids and becoming addicted to it, so their children are being impacted at home. So we have that next generation of younger youth that we need to be concerned about because of the foster care children. Most of them, their parents will die or have died, and now either their grandparents are taking care of them, that was the case, or they will be fostered in there. So that's something that we need to talk about,
my goodness.
in economics. And then for students who are athletes who get hurt, have been prescribed opioids and have been addicted to it. And then they're not able to finish their trajectory of high school and be successful or get a job. And unfortunately, majority of the time, their end is death as well. So it's also in the population of students, and it is an impact that impacts them.
I just thought of this. When I used to go to Africa frequently, and there were entire generations that were orphaned because of the AIDS crisis. And I'm sure this has not reached that level yet, but these kids that may be orphaned because of the opioid crisis, I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes sense. I know that both of you are a part of an upcoming effort or collective, as it were, to try as a community to get Central Florida to be specifically engaged in this challenge. Tony, can you talk a little bit about the genesis of this?
Yeah, and you actually teed it up perfectly at the beginning where you said that you're sure that we, as a healthcare company, see a lot of the challenges that are taking place, and you're right, we do. But we know, Joel, that the way for us to address this is we can't do it alone. We can, as a healthcare company, make an impact when we know that there's so many other segments in our community that are affected by this as well. So what we've done, as you talk about a collective impact, is we've reached out in this community to other leaders that represent other important sectors that we know should be a part of this: the business community, the nonprofit community, the faith community, law enforcement. And so together, what we're going to be able to do is to really think about what are some of the educational aspects of this. How can we bring about more awareness so we can all begin to row in the focus, the direction, and to try to make an impact in this community.
Yeah. Alicia, what are some of the, just as you look at this, you're a consultant, what are some of the ways that we as a community can band together in order to not only be prescriptive but preventative in this thing? What are some of the measures that we can take to both solve the problem before it gets started in some lives, but also intervene in those lives where there is a problem?
Right. I think what I liked about this is that Florida Blue and Tony recognized that Central Florida is a community that convenes well together, that has taken action in the past and really come together to implement change. And so I think the things that we do well is people are willing to listen from different sectors, and people are also willing to bend a little bit. And sometimes you can't bend, but if we do, I think we'll be able to then, like Tony expressed, educate, especially our healthcare providers who are already in the trenches with this. Our hospitals see this every day, that they're already in that space, but how can they help our business sectors, our faith leaders, get it out there more? We're not talking about it. People, like Tony expressed, 70,000 people are under the age of 50 are dying daily. I mean, a year, excuse me. And we're not talking about it. And this is an issue that is not, it impacts all of us. I think every family is impacted, that this is not a poverty issue. This is an epidemic. And I think
do we have any figures? I know that we have individual figures, and we know how this impacts families. I mean, that's just a natural thing. If you have someone who's addicted, the entire family is impacted and affected, and their daily lives are, partially at least dysfunctional because of that one person who is addicted. But when you look at the business community, how do you think this affects the business leaders or the companies in our community? Alicia, let me go back to you because you know about these things.
Yeah, and when we're speaking to some of our CEOs of companies who are expressing, their middle management team, we're talking about the hospitality industry, it's affecting them because one of their, to your point, family members, people are now functioning opioid addicts. So when you're in the workforce, it's definitely seen, relevant, and what impact are you making for your employees if you're a manager?
Right.
If you're even an hourly wage employee, that also impacts you because you cannot function fully to your
Right.
caliber. So they are seeing impact
Yeah.
in the daily workforce. And
Joel, this is an important piece because one of the things that I'm interested in is what's the total economic impact related to this. I saw a number actually that stated nationally in 2017, if you try to put a cost analysis to this, it costs opioid-related deaths was an economic impact of about $78 billion in this country. Wow. $78 billion, and I'll tell you how they came up with that. And we need to do the same thing locally, because when you think about lost productivity, when you think about the cost to health care, people that are being treated for addictions and treatment, and then individuals that are also going in and understanding or some relations to the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. If we take all of those and begin to put numbers to it, what's the impact to us locally? Yeah. So those are some of the things that we are going to be working on so we can be transparent. Good. Yeah. And so can we, and then we can begin to discuss how do we reduce the aspects of these of individuals that are being impacted, and then we began to draw down some of the cost of this as well.
You know, I'm thinking, I've got so many questions because you just said so many things I want to follow up with. But so you started off saying that we are gathering the different sectors of our community to address it in different ways, and this problem will only get worse because one of the things that you said, Alicia, is that we have functioning addicts, and everyone knows. I know from my own family history. That you can have a very high functioning addict, but it's only a matter of time before that doesn't function anymore. And so we're just at the beginning of this and its impact, which is all the more reason to really address it with every sector. But as we look at these different sectors, how can for example, the faith sector, I'm a faith leader. Our intervention is mostly relational because that's what we do. We care for people on a personal level. If there are people, and there are lots of people of faith and faith leaders who listen to this particular program and station, what would you tell them? How to approach someone who's in the midst of either a growing addiction or they've noticed something. What do you say to people? Because sometimes, you know, as you said, Alicia, we're not talking about it. And most of that's because we don't know what to say.
What to say?
Right.
Yeah. Anybody got any hints here?
Well, Joel, I would say that there's so much information out there today around treatment options and how to deal with folks when they're addicted. But one area that I think we do need better education on and more engagement is understanding the human condition. Because before someone gets dependent on these drugs and before someone gets addicted, there's a journey. And how do we, at the very beginning, begin to recognize that there's pain, not the pain that's causing them to take the drugs, but there's also emotional pain below. And we need to understand the best interventions and how to do that, how to engage. If you're in your families, what are the little things that you notice that are different that someone is doing? And we need skill around that, Joel. And that's where we need to have experts be able to help others, help all of us understand how to help individuals in our families and our friends and our coworkers, how to engage and how to, what's the proven ways that we can help folks. Those are some of the things that we want to be able to bring to help families, help individuals. Listen, some people do it well, and some people can do that, but others may need a little bit of help. And that's where we want to be able to support this community with that as well.
Terrific.
And I think the intersection, to Tony's point about how do we get, the faith and working into these different sectors, is that if we're collaborating together, I think the faith leaders could have the relationship with the mental health counselors and be able to communicate together and have, we're all not counselors, we all don't have the expertise to know what's really hurting people. But I think if we start working together and seeing, in the business sector, this is impacting me here, how, then the mental health business can then say this. And then you as that faith listener and relational can really kind of make better connections, I think.
Well, and I think both of you are hitting on this. All of us need training in this. I know as a former congregational pastor, I would not have known how to teach my congregation how to notice, how to address and personally follow up with people who they love, and so the mental health folks have to come and lead us in this. It would be great to have courses that churches and synagogues and mosques and other gathering faith communities, businesses, schools certainly, all of us need this kind of education so that we can be a part of a holistic solution. When you look at this community, Tony, what do we have working in our favor?
Alicia alluded to it earlier. We as a company, Joel, we work around the whole state. There's some great communities all across the state of Florida. We felt it was important to initiate this in this community because we've seen Central Florida come together on so many other important issues in a collaborative way with some results and with ongoing work that we felt this is so important for us across not only the state but nationally, and we felt we wanted to use the same approach that this community has done in other projects, and let's talk about how this could now target this opioid crisis. But because of the great work of the leaders in this community and that they've already done, being in a collective impact manner, faith leaders and business leaders, not-for-profits, we wanted to address this with this community first in the state.
Great. So, Lisa, let me ask you just the opposite end of that question, and that is, what kind of challenges do you think we have as a community in being successful in addressing this problem together? There's always special kinds of, well, I don't know if that'll work with, but what are our challenges to collaborate and to convene on this topic?
I think the same challenge is to bring us to convene together, where everybody has a different lens. They're scared. We're you talk to some individuals and they're scared about, what does this mean? Is this really real? So those are the issues, and also what platform should they take? Is this a platform that we're going to do individually or together? And I think that's what I like about it, that it's in a collective component. So as thing as we start educating and making people comfortable that we're doing this collectively, that it's not just the faith community out on their own cold, or that people don't feel alone, or that there's a risk. I don't think there's a risk when we're helping people. So I think once we communicate that will be our challenge, to remind people that the risk, although it might be high in their reputation, and should say, will help people.
Tony, I know that you were a large part in initiating this effort of collecting at least the first call of community leaders together. How far out does the strategy go? Have you got the second and third step planned, or is that just kind of we're gathering together and go, okay, now what?
Yeah, great question. Our goal, Joel, was to it was our interest to make sure we were able to pull leaders together, but we didn't know how to do that in a way where we've seen it's been done before. So that's why we reached out to Andre Bailey and Alicia to help us coordinate a lot of these leaders to come together, Joel. But I'll tell you that our goal is not to be prescriptive and share with this group of successful business and nonprofit leaders that have seen how they can move projects along. Our job was to grab these folks together.
Yeah.
And Joel, out of that, I think you'll see. I mean, sure, we've mapped out what we think the next 18 months should look like. But we want to hear from these leaders that represent different areas, and together, I think this group will lay out that journey and lay out a template on what we should be moving towards over the next year or 2 years. And what we would want to see is how can this ultimately evolve into a permanent work and into an area that, because I don't see this all of a sudden eradicating or not being important. So our job is to hopefully allow these conversations to take place where it can turn into something that will be existing here for a long, long time.
Good, good. Alicia, you're part of the collective, and for those of you who don't know, this is a gathering, a network of, I would say probably hundreds now, just the relationships, mostly younger entrepreneurial go-getters. It does my heart good to see this kind of thing form, and the way y'all think non-institutionally. It's critical to have our pillar institutions involved. But just as you said, Tony, as this thing begins to bring up solutions that were not thought of before, obviously we need fresh thinking. How do you see a group like that playing into a community like this when they operate by, kind of, entrepreurial. They're kind of gathering the things as they go and solving things as they go along. How do you see that?
I think they're disruptive.
Yeah.
And because they are, I think they bring a whole different lens that will help us in the sense of now, in time, on the ground. Not so high up, right, in the scope of things. And I think their work and their lens will help us see a whole different population that maybe we aren't even talking about. So maybe not students or education, but that millennial pocket that has brought a great change into our system of demographic. Right. So I think they'll be a good provider of information.
That's great. Well, it's one of my great hopes that both the gathered resources and the gathered wisdom within our institutions can be largely augmented by groups of people. We used to call them skunk works, where they don't need to go through procedures and apply for budgets and all of that kind of stuff. They just can figure out how to do it in their network. And so, do either of you want to add something that I haven't thought of so far, or an aspect that I haven't thought of so far? Because I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to the opioid crisis.
Just one other thing on the last piece you mentioned. So think about the realities of families and individuals that are affected by this are across the board. Entrepreneurs, younger, older, you name it, and we have to make space for all of those voices so we can be relevant to the whole community. And that's where we need to be flexible and we need to listen, we need to understand, but make sure we're capturing what everyone is affecting, how they're affected by this, to make sure that's being addressed as we move forward.
I like that.
So to Alicia's point, we want to be open and we want to accept a lot of folks to be able to understand how people how this has specifically affected them, and making sure that we've got a sort of a template or a plan for how we can move forward.
That's the great strategy.
There's no age here. I think it's
Yeah.
affecting all of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
From cradle, obviously,
Yep,
from
yes.
parents who
Yes.
conceive children who are addicted,
Right.
Yes.
to the end.
Right.
So, right.
Well, and we're all on a steep learning curve.
Yes,
You know,
we
are.
we've got to have enough information that we can be accurately descriptive before we can be accurately prescriptive.
You're right.
Like that.
Thank you for being on. This has gone by so fast. I've got so many more questions, but as we approach this together, thank you for your leadership. We want to be of assistance to those who are in help, who are surprised or who need help, who are surprised that they need help. And once you get into this kind of cycle, it's very difficult to get out unless you have information and people who care about you. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
We're out of time. I hate this, but I do want to thank you and our panelists, Alicia and Tony, for joining us on Power Talks. Remember, these discussions are just that. They're discussions among us, but we'd love to see you continue the discussions at home, go one step further, get involved. Because when Power Talks, you're empowered through the voice of truth. See you next time.
You just watched Power Talks, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.